All right, so let's get it going. I know that we're the ones who are kind of separating you from the club. So we'll try to make it sweet and short. So only like, what was it, like 90 minutes?
Yeah, it'd be about 90. So
Right,
I'm
perfect.
Siegfried. This is Roy. We're here to talk to you guys today about Veeam Data Platform and Veeam other things, right, in the cloud.
Yeah. So my name is Roy Diel. I'm a cloud solution architect working for the Product Management Alliance, and my alliance is AWS, so focusing on the cloud, and joining me with Billy here. And today I want to talk about the Cloud Voyage. So what does it mean from traversing through your Cloud Voyage in every step that you're in that voyage, and how do you keep your data secure, resilient, protected throughout that life cycles of data. And in this session, what we'll do is we'll examine data protection through the lens of 3 different personas per se. So you'll get to see in each one of the personas, and when I say personas, I mean where are you as a customer? What stage are you as the customer? Are you starting the journey to the cloud? Are you running hybrid platforms that need to protect data in multiple places? Or are you migrating to the cloud right now? So we'll talk about data lifecycle management. We'll talk about security tactics around it, and how do you keep your resilient strategies. So by the end of the session, I hope that you'll have a little bit of better understanding of how to keep yourself protected throughout this data lifecycle.
Exactly. And as Roy talked about, a lot of this is things to think about in the beginning. So if you're nascent in your journey, these are good considerations. If you're a little bit farther down the road, this is a really squeaky stage, Roy. If you're a little bit farther down the road, you got that, didn't you? A little bit further down the road, it's also good to consider maybe what things did I not think about? What things are going to maybe surprise me in the future? So we just want to have this session to give you guys enough information to consider it, to ask why a little bit more, and to think about what else do I want to dig into? What's the next conversation I want to have with my partner or my Veeam expert?
And let's talk about the modern data protection challenge. What are the challenges that you guys are facing today as the different customer personas? We're talking about having multiple places where you're protecting your data, whether it's on-prem, private, or public cloud deployment, including the hyperscalers, having the major public clouds, right, and using various SaaS applications that you need to protect. So this multiple environment or reality just create significant challenges of managing that data. And we see that many organizations are kind of struggling with this fragmented way of how do we kind of get this all under control with this environment. So let's begin with our first type of customer persona. I called it the cloud novice. Now, I'm not implying that any one of you is a novice. I'm looking at it from a customer perspective of what do you do. So the profile for this customer is primarily operating mainly on-prem, starting to maybe have a cloud footprint, but it's not necessarily still backing it up. The majority of the workload is running on-prem. So if you guys are working with VMware on-prem and you are considering migration, backing the data up and keeping it consistent and resilient, you're starting to consider the cloud as your backup target. So you're really concerned about security, right? The cloud is this like someone else's computer. I'm not sure, and they're telling me about the shared responsibility model, and that I'm responsible for things, but I don't own them. So data centers and so on. I'm really concerned about cost management because it's really hard for me to estimate how much eventually it's going to cost. I have problem with compatibility. So sometimes I don't know if I'll be able to use that cloud backup target when I need to restore. And I'm also kind of needed to make sure I'm meeting certain compliance. So if I'm a customer in the healthcare, I need to preserve HIPAA. So how do I do that and still keep myself compliant around as a cloud novice?
Yeah, just a couple of points there. Number one, Roy mentioned the shared responsibility model. Is there anyone up here that's not familiar with that term, or you've not looked at it? If so, you don't have to raise your hand, but please, I urge you, whoever you're working with to be your cloud vendor, especially your public cloud vendors, understand the shared responsibility model. They all publish it. You need to know what you're responsible for and what they're responsible for. Roy, how often does a public cloud provider do a restore for you?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
How often does a public cloud provider actually do a restore for you versus just guaranteeing availability or durability?
Oh, exactly 0 times.
0 times. So when it comes to actually recovering data, not just keeping it, available or durable, if you actually lose it, it is your responsibility to get that data back. That's why just because it's in the cloud or just because it's in a replicated state does not mean that it is protected from a backup perspective. So that's super important for you guys to understand. And then cost management. One of the biggest surprises to people in the cloud is egress. It's cheap to put it all in. You can put all in that you want, but when you take it out, we're going to get you, right? And I shouldn't say it that way like it's a bad thing, but that's how the model goes. I'm just having fun at the end of the day. But that's something you need to understand. How often do you have to recover? It makes you think and prioritize, what do I want to recover? It's not always everything. So it's things to think about as you go through your cloud journey.
Yep. But still, right, there are a lot of benefits to use the cloud as a backup target. In many cases, it is a very cost-effective way of creating another offsite storage. So we'll talk about the 32110 once again, as we always do. Eliminate the need of having a local tape management system or overhead or even a local storage which reaches end of life. You don't want to refresh it, but you still need that as a backup target. Scalable capacity on demand, that's a very, very important thing. How many of you needs to kind of take actions when you run out of space in your local storage? I guess it's a very common thing. Also, a lot of companies are trying to lower their capital expenditure, right?
Or I'd say have next to no cap or CapEx, right? The whole idea of the cloud was shifting CapEx to OpEx. It's just something, it's a subscription. It's like those of you that get your trash collected or you have your grass cut. It's lawn as a service, trash as a service. It is shifting to an OpEx model. And we understand, especially for more smaller, medium, and commercial businesses, you don't always have a colo site. And honestly, with the cloud, you don't necessarily need a colo site. It can absolutely act as that for you.
Yep. And it's very ideal for that long-term retention secondary copy that you want to keep or need to keep. I was mentioning HIPAA, right? So MRIs need to be saved for 7 years from when they were last touched. Yep. But usually no one touches them. But they still need to be there. So it satisfies that backup rule that we're promoting heavily and helps you with kind of disaster recovery planning initially, right? If you're still running heavily on-prem. And we at Veeam, so we have a set of solutions to satisfy your needs for a cloud backup target. We have it all built and integrated with all the major hyperscalers, so you can back up to AWS S3, including most of the tiers, so depending on the needs. You can use our scale-up backup repository in order to tier off to cloud tier and control your costs with sometimes when you need to have a slightly cheaper storage than your on-prem, you have that ability to use capacity tier and tier off the data over there. But also the ability now going directly to cloud and skipping on-prem storage, even for the performance tier, can have a great benefit with a direct to Glacier addition that we've just recently added to the portfolio. So you can take that data, stay it in the performance tier on your local storage, but then put it on S3 Glacier. Anyone knows how much aside of Bill, anyone knows how much does a terabyte cost on S3 Glacier Deep Archive? So about $1 terabyte a month. That's how much it costs comparing to, I think it's unbeatable, right?
Well, I mean, it's tape, right? Sorry. It's tape on the back end.
So
Cheap.
You do have multiple implementation options with using Veeam Data Platform in order to achieve that satisfaction as the cloud novice. And I'll talk about, for each one of the personas, I'll talk about the security considerations and the resiliency considerations that you want to have. So the security considerations are still, right, to have an end-to-end encryption. I know that Paul Megan was talking on stage earlier today, but we were talking about the ability, the data that will be encrypted all the way. So when it's on-prem, it's getting encrypted. When it's on the wire, it's encrypted, so it will be resilient. And when it's at rest in the cloud, it still needs to be encrypted. The ability to have zero-knowledge password approach. So you don't need to know the passwords. You're setting it once, and then you're creating tokens for security, additional security layer. Of course, all the network traffic is encrypted, and whenever you need, and we'll talk about it in the later persona, sometimes you even need to make that data immutable for a certain amount of time, so you'll have that overhead protection for you to be able to recover if someone is trying to tamper with the data. Access control, right, least privilege, we all know about, and also security considerations to be able to do some regular security audits to your data, making sure that effectively no one can access it. And with Veeam, we can, of course, with the data platform, we can do that all. We have, we're encrypting the data, we're getting the option to get that data immutable, whether on-prem with different hardened repositories options or in the cloud. And we're integrated with the IAM service. So in order that only whoever or what resource has access to that data set is the only one who needs to get access.
Absolutely.
We'll go to the resilience. So in the resilience world, we're talking about the strategies around it, that you want to have multiple backup repositories, right? We want to satisfy the 3-2-1, 1-0 rule. I'm leaving the enhancement of what it means from the cloud to later on. Making regular backup verifications, right? Using Sure Backup in this case. Using health monitoring, making sure that your data is still available when you need to retrieve it. So testing that. It's also important even when you have that on-prem majority and you're just backing up to the cloud, it's still important to test that backup data sets to make sure that you're able to restore it. And you have the option to have multiple mobility options. So the beauty with our platform is that the data becomes highly portable.
It's a portable data format by default.
Yep.
The way we write.
Yep, exactly. So if we're looking at the Cloud Novice, right, what is your roadmap if you're starting to look at how do you want to proceed with creating those backups? You just started to play with it. Assess and plan, right? So analyze what you're doing today. How are you doing it today? Does it make sense to use the same policies and then migrate them to the cloud from a resiliency option? So for example, if you're using a traditional traditional on-prem storage device, does it have the same resiliency as a cloud storage device? So maybe you need less copies.
Absolutely.
You need to define what are the appropriate or required retention policies, and of course, make sure that you try and see how much is it going to cost you in both ends. So Veeam have cost estimators, so we have cost calculators. We have the ability to check that and to know in advance those policies that I'm trying to protect are estimated to cost me this and that amount. I want to add a little asterisk that's saying that if you're adding immutability to this, make sure you know that immutability comes with a little bit of additional cost, because I see some customers that just are running into that, putting object lock on everything, and then they're just overwhelmed by the API bill shock.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as you guys know, all data is important. So much like Roy pointed out, you've got to consider, especially with immutability, because that does have additional cost in the cloud from a compute and, well, more from a compute perspective. But you've got to consider that because, again, like Roy said, it's just like you do when you're deciding what to back up. You don't always just back up everything. There's things that you don't want. There's things you don't need that's redundant. There's customer data you don't need Tyler's ABBA MP3 collection, right? We don't need any of that stuff. We don't need Jim's MC Hammer collection. So we skip those things in our backups. So that's something to really think about. So can I take a couple from here? Give you a little bit of break?
Sure.
So in addition to this, you've got to make sure all of your credentials are covered. Think of, I liken this back to when we all started messing with virtualization and multiple layers of authentications needed to protect the data that you want to protect. Scale out backup repository is just another way to help scale your storage from on-prem to the cloud. Is there anyone in here that's at 100% running in cloud? They're not hybrid, you are pure cloud. Exactly. So it's still very much a hybrid world, and to be able to extend your storage from on-prem into the cloud is just something fantastic. Encryption and security will always be important. You heard the gentleman from Amazon talking about this morning. Your data takes a very long journey before it gets to its final destination. As such, immutability, encryption at rest, in flight, and where it lands, super, super important. And at the end of the day, you've got to monitor this stuff. What gets measured gets done. You've got to monitor the performance and monitor your cost, especially, we've talked about many things, egress, immutability. Don't just fire and forget with this as much as we want to. Go take a look at it and seeing, does my cost and performance, do they line up to what I'm expecting? What type of policies are you going to put in place to take advantage of tiering? Again, to take advantage of that cost and performance. And then finally, this is my favorite bullet on this slide, and it's that last one. Please document your recovery procedures. When it is time to recover, guess what? It's not like, oh, I'm going to have some Chipotle, do some recovery here, and just enjoy it. It's going to be cool. The shit has hit the fan when it's time to recover. It's not always a great experience. It's not always the best of time, and that's not when you want to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure you document. You'll see
please,
it throughout.
Please.
And don't test it just when things happen, because you're not going to have time to start and understand what you need to do.
Just do not.
Yep.
Unless you just hate life. Don't do that.
Yeah. So our second persona is our hybrid pioneer. So our hybrid pioneer operates both in on-prem and in the cloud in multiple environments. He needs to protect multiple environments and multiple workloads across different platforms. How many of you are managing more than one cloud and need to back it up? Okay. But
life's easy.
But there is definitely a need here. And when you're trying to use that, you need to just go to different systems. So you're really concerned about the consistency of your protection environment. So across all of your environments, you need to manage multiple protection tools, multiple policies, multiple retention policies, and you need to have that visibility across that data set. So it all kind of blows up in this case, and you find yourself in a place where it's super difficult for you to just look at the cost and optimize the cost in such an environment.
Absolutely. I mean, you went to the cloud to save some money at the end of the day, to not have to cool, to not have to power, to not have to store, to not have to patch, maintain, and all that stuff that costs money just to manage your environment. So you definitely have to keep cost in mind.
Yep.
Can we take a couple of these?
Go ahead.
Sure. So common hybrid issues that we see, siloed protection policies. Even better, hey, the way I protected it on-prem, I'm going to try to do the same thing in the cloud. Let's treat it all like physical. Please don't. Inconsistent policies as well are a result of what I was just talking about. If you have that siloedness, if you're not thinking about that end-to-end visibility of what you're doing, and again, where that data goes and where it travels, inconsistency comes up, and that just leads to more complexity. And the more complexity you have, and the more complex things are, the more skill sets you're going to need to get all this done. And that ultimately leads to very disparate recovery processes. So we understand between on-prem, between in the cloud, there's different recovery methods and processes you can take. Again, what is the right tool and right size for the job? All of that helps you manage, help you really keep that overhead down, because again, measuring cost, what gets measured gets done. You've got to keep up with that because you went to the cloud to lower your overhead. I cannot tell you enough about how important that is. And then finally, that cross-environment dependencies. What are some things here you'd close them out on this slide with, Roy?
So the dependency means that, okay, I'm creating that backup on my on-prem or on one environment. What happens? Do I need to look at when this first backup is finished because I need to do a cascading backup to a lower tier or something that is dependent? So doing that in a cross environment is much more difficult if you don't have a centralized management option that gives you that kind of cascading backup plan, and that's what everyone's
And it's super important with retention too, because when retention starts counting, right?
Yep.
All of those things have a factor here.
Yep. So with Veeam, again, we have that, we've approached this from a unified perspective, right? So the data platform gives you that single platform for all of your deployments. If you're working in a hybrid environment, you can go into Veeam Data Platform, you can see what's going on in your Veeam backup for AWS, or what's going on your Veeam backup for Azure, or your Kubernetes. You can see it all from that same data platform and have a consistent policy structure to it. So all your policies across the environments could look and feel the same, which will make it easier and then eventually cheaper to manage those environments.
Which that's the goal, right?
Yep, exactly. So the capabilities to protect the on-premises, the Veeam backup for AWS, the SaaS protection, and Kubernetes, all through that unified one platform, giving you the advantage to be able to see what's going on and react and make it more cost effective for you. And the security strategies for a hybrid environment, of course, it's kind of similar, but again, it's enhanced now to the cloud, right? So you need to have a consistent encryption approach. You need to make sure that everything's encrypted, and with the data platform, you can be assured that we're constantly making everything with the same level on encryption. Credential management, being able to store everything in one place and not the need to access it by using access tokens. So it makes it easier to get protected with password management, for example. Immutability options, again, it gives you a single pane of glass for us with Veeam Data Platform. The ability to have a secure restore. If something happens, you need to restore from a ransomware attack.
You need to restore clean.
You need to restore clean.
Right.
So you have the ability to use that space that is clean to make sure that the restore point is secure. And you know, during VeeamON now, we've talked a lot about how do we use AI to make sure that the data is secure, what is our last safe recovery point. So all that goes back into Veeam Data Platform and VeeamON, where you can see how you're making that whole environment secure using VDP.
Absolutely.
All right. And so from resilience, again, keeping hybrid environment resilient is talking about the ability to orchestrate it all from one place again. So it's pretty much repetitive with the ability to, again, test, recovery, time monitoring, make sure you're meeting your SLAs, making sure that the RPOs and RTOs that you're setting up make sense even before, during, when you're testing to recover, and I hope that it will never happen. But when you need to do an actual restore,
you know what to do.
You're
ready.
You know what to do and you're ready. But more important, I don't think we talk enough about data lifecycle management.
We don't talk, we used to say DLM all the time back in the day. Anybody remember DLM or? Man, oh yeah, all right, Tyler, go Jim. Yeah, you storage guys, you definitely love it. This is so important because again, we've said this a few times, Roy, right? This data takes a very, very long journey.
Yep.
And on top of that, we mentioned regulatory compliance earlier. You don't want to keep data that you are no longer required to keep, full stop. As soon as that data has aged out from a compliance and regulation standpoint, you want to get rid of it. It can actually be a liability. Exactly. So understanding not just where my data goes from initial backup where I keep it on hardware for fast recovery up to even the cloud or even an archive cold storage for long time storage, I need to really understand when does that thing need to come out. Roy, what would you add to that?
Yeah, so look at the data lifecycle as from a holistic approach, right? So when you're setting up your policies, think about the entire game. So from when you need it mostly, so you put it in a performance tier because you're assuming that you'll need to take a little bit back, immediately backing up to a secondary storage for a longer term retention and keeping it there, but also keeping it in a low cost archival tier. So performance using the capabilities of scale-out backup repository, right? So performance tier, sometimes capacity tier, and archive tier in order to look at the whole picture of how long you need that data to live.
It's a way to almost not have to worry about it so much, where you can say, I want my data to go from my most expensive nearline storage all the way out to an archive on a very regulated and time-based basis, if you will.
Yep.
Even to the point of deletion.
Yep.
And that's the best part. You can set the policies based on what your regulatory compliance is. We'll take care of the rest.
Exactly. When you don't need it anymore, you don't need it anymore.
When you don't need it anymore, you want it gone.
Yep. So let's talk about my last persona, which is the cloud migrator. This is far, I think, the most complex persona or a customer, because this is a customer who has that hybrid environment, but he's actively working into moving data from let's say from point A to point B, but usually we're talking about moving data from your on-prem into your cloud infrastructure. So you're migrating workloads. You need to protect that workload throughout the life cycle of your migration journey. And that is something that in some cases is creating kind of a risk point, because how do you make sure that you're protected before, during, and after the migration while maintaining your business continuity there?
Can I ask a question really quick? And you guys can choose to answer, you not. I mean, I know that there's some facts here, but there's been a lot of changes with VMware, right? From a licensing perspective. And in my opinion, Roy, looking back over my 30 years of backup, you know, I haven't seen a moment in time that has moved more people to the cloud than the VMware changes. Are any of you guys moving more aggressively to the cloud now based on that? Okay, so we're not crazy to hear that, and we're hearing that a lot more. So even though we talk about this is the cloud migrators, that kind of, you know, well, you're really well oiled in your journey, so many people out there right now, Roy, right, are having to become this cloud migrator to say, okay,
exactly.
This is the thing that's moving my hand to say, all right, we're finally going to do it. We've all been talking about, we're going to the cloud. Cloud first.
Yep.
20 years. Now we're actually doing it. So I think it's pretty interesting you call that out.
Yes, and I did, you know, with the power of breaking everything into three, I also broke this down into three sections. So the first stage is protecting before the migration. And so first of all, you have to establish what is the baseline. What are you protecting? What is the scope of it? But then, Billy, you want to help me with the second line, because you said it here. What do you need to do in order to make sure you'll be clear?
Document, document, document.
Yeah, exactly. So document the environment, the dependencies, build that plan of what are you going to do to make sure you have the ability to recover in this stage, and that you'll be able to recover later on the other stages that I'll talk about in a second. So create those backups that sometimes in this case are migration ready, and that you have the ability to quickly restore in either locations, right? So depending on where the data, if you haven't started yet, then you might wanna or need to restore to have your business continuity. So with Veeam, of course, we have the ability to do application-aware processing. So we'll create that backup after we started to do some procedures, backing up, you know, clearing cache on the databases, do whatever you need. Using Sure Backup to verify that the backups are working, and make sure your backup copies, right? So everything is secure. So the second stage is the during. So if we're just doing a simple lift and shift, we need to make sure that we are at this point where I think that this is the stage where you're mostly vulnerable, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You're moving data, you're still running in production, but you're maybe not running your most recent backup. And if something happens, you need to make a decision. Okay, so where do I come back in this stage? So what happens is that you need to protect the data immediately before you're starting that journey. And when the data moves to the other side, you need to start to create the backups on that other side as well. And even in some cases, make it immutable for a temporary time.
I would always make it immutable. I think for me in this day and age, we all know, if you guys haven't heard the news, cyber criminals, and I don't call them cyber attackers or cyber threats, they are criminals. They are breaking into your houses, and the most thing that they want to get to are your backups. Because as soon as they encrypt those backups, guess what? You have to pay the ransom.
Yep.
Or you go out of business. It's you got two awful choices, and you got to figure out which one you want to do. So it's so important to encrypt it before, because honestly, I say encrypt, immutability as well.
Yep.
When it's in transit, that is when it's its most vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know your site's secured. You work hard on that. AWS, Azure, Google, Kubernetes, they can tell you, they can prove to you how they are secure. But going in between, not so much. Exactly. So do yourself a favor and protect yourself. This sounds awful. Do yourself a favor and ensure you're immutable before you move your data. Exactly. There we go.
And the last stage is, okay, we finished that migration, so now what do we do? When do we retire the original data set? So first of all, we need to start making sure that the policies that we had before are consistent with the workload that now lives in the cloud. So making sure that we're using that cloud native backup approach. So each one of the big hyperscalers, they do have the option to use native tools with Veeam to protect the data. So if we're taking native snapshots or backing up EBS volumes on AWS, or taking those EC2 instances and with Veeam creating backup that will sit on S3, so it will become portable again, where if you'll be able to move it around.
Another cloud. Like I said, it's inherently portable. And you know what, Roy, one of my favorite things here, my guys may have heard us talk about Veeam is more. One of the things Veeam is, it's more than just on-premises backup. It is full cloud protection. So the important thing to know is, once you get across and you've instantiated these workloads in the cloud, you've already got a backup solution for that. You have us for that. A lot of people also turn to the built-in backup solutions, and I've heard they're good enough, but Roy, I don't believe good enough or good enough is enough.
Good enough is not good enough.
It is not good enough. Yeah. It is like bare bones, and you guys need more than that.
For sure. So we give that option to protect in that stage. We're supporting all the major hyperscalers, and there's also the ability to deploy Veeam backup and replication, or our platform, in any major cloud. So for AWS, in example, you can deploy it from the marketplace. So even if your on-prem environment, something happened to it, you have your backup sitting in the cloud, in a few minutes,
restore it right there.
You just have the ability to restore, or restore directly to any virtual machine that is running on any cloud from Veeam.
Absolutely. And as we go forward, you saw Anton mention VDP as a service. As we go forward, and that is actually living and instantiated as a SaaS model, everything we've talked about is already going to be there. All the benefits of durability and availability in the cloud are going to make sure that's available for you.
Super excited about
oh my gosh,
VDP.
Super excited.
Yes, exactly. So the security focus is, again, the same, even though the kind of responsibility model shifted from on-prem to now data lives in the cloud. Yes, you don't own the hard drives themselves. You don't need to control the perimeter or secure the data center, but you're still responsible for the data from being protected from that no one else can access it. And you need to have your migration pathway secure. In some cases, make the data immutable. Use things like multi-factor authentication, role-based access, list privilege, all that good stuff. You still have to maintain it, and it becomes even kind of more important because, again, one of the layers is something that you don't control anymore.
Yeah, but know what your responsibility is. Do not assume. If you don't hear anything else today, please know what your responsibility is in that shared model. Don't assume what it is.
Yep. So resilience during transformation, it's kind of, again, making sure the data is resilient. We talked about immutability a lot. We're talking about now test the environment. Now it's running in the cloud. Make sure that it's resilient. Make sure that you're adjusting your SLAs to meet that new environment based on what you need. Maybe that was happening in on-prem environment no longer applies for the cloud because different reasons of how you're able to restore, recover. You don't have to replace a drive anymore, but you maybe have to, when an EC2 die, you have to create a new one and automate it and then pull that data from backup if it's needed.
Yeah, what if there is a cloud outage? It has happened.
It has happened.
Always be covered. So when we talk about that, Roy, is it a good time to go talk about 32110?
No, not just yet.
Okay, I get so
not
excited
just yet.
about that
I know you're
topic.
excited about it, but not just yet. So again, it's a little bit repetitive, but make sure you're documenting what needs to happen. You train you're getting trained of how to perform the actions that are applicable now to the cloud. And Veeam makes it easier because you can still do that from the data platform. So if you do that, it will look and feel the same. Orchestrate your disaster recovery, right? Use VRO. It's a great tool to automate. Make sure that you know what's happening. We have great tools to even do self-service restoration like M365.
Cross-platform restoration.
Exactly. Yes, so all that good stuff. And now the section that you were waiting for, and let's do this. You talk about the 321. I'll add the notch.
You can talk about the fun stuff. Okay, everybody knows 321. 3 copies of your backups, 2 different types of storage. One of them needs to be off-site. But at Veeam, we say, nay, that is not quite enough. There's other things you have to consider, because even if you meet 321, you could just have crap backups out there. You could have things that are not good, they're not recoverable. So, Roy, what does that extra 1 and 0 mean? I know it looks like a zip code a little bit, but what are we doing here?
Yeah, so it's AWS regions zip code, the 321.
Oh, okay, got it.
So what I wanted to add on this is that 321 was implied to an on-prem world, right?
That's correct.
But now in the world where you have cloud, the 2 means 2 different media. Okay, one of them is your cloud backup, which is highly resilient. And it also applies to the offsite copy. But it also, if you, for example, put it on another AWS account, it becomes air-gapped.
Yeah.
If you add immutability, object lock to it, you're answering the immutable part of it.
But what's the most important thing?
Test.
And look at 0.
No
errors.
Yes.
If you had errors in those backups and you're going to say, well, that's my DR plan. No. Keep running it again until you are error-free. Get to that error-free state, because you want to be able to depend on the stuff you're putting out there to basically rescue your business with in the event that that does happen.
For sure. And just like to summarize, right, this stuff that we've talked about in the previous slide, we have every option that you need to create a flexible, a secure cloud, no matter where you're sitting on your on-prem. How do you want to back up? Which cloud provider do you want to back up? Do you want to use our service providers? Do you want to go into Veeam Data Vault? Do you want to go
Yes, you do.
Of course you do. Wherever option you have with the data platform, you have the ability to directly utilize cloud object storage, archive tier, performance tier. And when you need to restore that data, you'll have that option to do it from the platform, which gives you that full control of your environment.
Absolutely.
So key takeaways, right, for this different, which we've kind of repeated throughout this presentation, for each one of the personas, right? If you're just starting, start with your cloud targets. See how it goes. Document, verify that it works, that you can recover. If you're a hybrid pioneer, make sure that you're protected throughout the environments that you're managing, and try to maintain a consistent policy, kind of a structure, because it will make your life easier, and eventually it will make it all a little bit more cost effective.
Because you want it to be as pain-free as possible during recovery. That's what you're doing all this prep for.
Exactly.
So when it really matters, you're focused on doing the job and not fixing what's wrong.
For sure. And if you're a cloud migrator, make sure you're protected throughout each stage of your data migration. It's super important. Adapt to the new security features of the cloud that you're going to, and test. We talked about it all the time. So my last slide is just main general key takeaways. And I think Billy here, he loves the number 1, so I'll give it to you.
Oh yeah, it is a journey, not a destination. and your data is vulnerable during this journey, do your part, protect yourself, protect your data.
Exactly. You must evolve during that cloud journey.
You're responsible.
Yep. It's not the same for when you're doing it. As far as we're making it easy with data platform to manage it, no matter what it is, it's still not the same. Yes, the cloud is someone else's computer, right? But there are a little bit different preferences in each one of those settings that you would like to make sure you're aware of. So we help you provide that unified protection across all those stages. Another important thing is assess where are you today,
And
right?
not just once, right?
Yep. Throughout.
That's now, where am I? Figure out where you're at.
Yeah, and with that, look at the gaps. Where do you feel like you have gaps right now in your protection strategy, in your environment that you need to maybe fill either temporarily or permanently? So when something happens to the data, and we know that unfortunately it's not if, it's when.
It is always when.
Yeah. And just continue to evolve. Continue to make sure you're checking the status of your journey and enhance it to always be ahead of whoever is trying to impact you.
Yeah, because that's the trick, right? And where we close it out is the cloud is constantly evolving. The cloud is still very nascent in its journey. It's constantly evolving, constant new things coming out. But nothing evolves faster than cyber criminals. It is scary. It keeps us up at night. It should do you the same. So constantly enhance this thing. Number one, to make sure that you can migrate and you're portable if you ever need to move that data. And even more importantly, that you can recover it. And you can recover it if nobody can tamper with it.
Exactly. So I really hope I was able to give you a little bit more food for thought here with your cloud journey. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. This is my LinkedIn. You're always welcome to reach out to me and ask me questions that are related to protecting data in Veeam data platform or in the cloud. And thank you so much. Appreciate it.
If there's any questions, feel free to come up. But off to the party, guys. Thank you again.
Yep. Thank you.
Appreciate it.